Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the AAA podcast. Today, we are joined by Director of Volleyball Sports Performance and Assistant Director of Olympic Sports at Southern Methodist University. Please welcome to the show, Anthony Cockrill.
Thanks, boys. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on. We have a lot of really fun topics to discuss with you coming up here, but the first thing we have to know, it's the first thing we ask all our guests, is what's your relationship with caffeine? How much are we drinking a day? What forms are you drinking? What kind of gets Anthony through a day?
I have a healthy relationship. I've had my time where you had 600 milligrams, moved on from that. Right now, it's pretty, 1 cup of black coffee around 7 a.m., and that gets me through the day at the moment. But, we start season here in about a week, so that could triple or quadruple as the semester goes on. But pretty healthy at the moment, but I'm sustaining myself. I go through these ebbs and flows of every now and then I'll need to crack a rain or two Celsius. You know how it goes. But right now, just black coffee, 1 cup a day, trying to stay strong.
There we go. That's good. That's a
like
good answer.
A drip coffee or espresso?
Straight from the Keurig in our locker room with a Kroger brand, basic, the nastiest, cheapest coffee. I don't care about the taste. Just give me the caffeine. That's all I care about.
Yeah. I feel like the more and more I drink caffeine, the less and less I care about the taste. Except
Yes.
I went back to energy drinks lately, so it's like now it's kind of I'm feeding like my wantingness for soda, and I just get it through energy drinks. Just trying different flavors.
Every now and then I contemplate, like, I haven't used pre-workout in years, but every now and then I contemplate, sorry, those dogs are going crazy. Every now and then I contemplate going back to like the Dr. Jackal, Dr. Hyde, whatever, that stuff, that cheap $20 pre-workout, but it's like 400 milligrams and it tastes really good. I contemplate that probably once a month, but staying strong.
Oh yeah. So Anthony, I've been following you for over probably a year now, just on like social media, and me and Ronan have been really excited to talk to you because we always talk about you off the podcast and the things you post. So one of the things that I feel like has become popular, or I've been even running through myself, is Framework for Flight, the program you created. And I just want to know, like, who are your mentors or people who have kind of helped shape your philosophy and just writing framework in general?
Yeah. It's I get this question a lot, and I unfortunately don't have like a list of resources that are really specific. A lot of it's honestly just time with a lot of different people. Man, I'm sorry, this dog has the zoomies and it's running rampant. Um, Worst time. But yeah, honestly, it's just a lot of time and experience with a lot of different people. I think it first started like when I was honestly like a GA at Tennessee Tech was when I first started getting into like social media or just like discovering coaches on social media is probably a better term. And I first started following like Joey Burgess and Alan Bishop, and they were all at Utah State. Dave Scholes was the head, and like they were training the same way they are now. And I just had like some bias towards the aesthetics of their training, and then that kind of maybe started that style and bias of things. And then obviously after my GA, I went to Houston, so being around Coach Bishop and the first intro to weight releasers and like the extended eccentrics, all the various tempo kind of stuff that you see. And then just like through time after that, I went to UMBC and just playing with it, myself and probably for about 2 years. And then Tim Karen came out with the book, The Strength Deficit. And it kind of like basically systemized all of these like things, but with like some real like hard literature backing on just like why things are doing the things they are, and like just the various adaptations at a structural standpoint that like I just like to, like when I'm doing things, have a bias towards like things like hard whys, and it's not a lot of theory. So this book kind of started like quantifying a lot of the theory with like hard literature on things. So yeah, I mean, honestly, like the biggest like you can come, I guess I should say, is like Alan Bishop, obviously, and then Tim Karen for sure. and then just time and of implementing it with various semesters with different athletes and kind of refining it to what it is now. I always say it's not a lot of like I wasn't like deep diving like research and literature, on sarcomerogenesis or anything crazy. Like my understanding of that is very, surface level. Um, but I think there is a need for understanding to do some of those things or understand why to do those things. But yeah, those two are the biggest for sure. And then yeah, honestly, just time of trial and error of training that style for probably 5 years.
Program like something specific? Like, do you use that exact program with your athletes, or is it kind of just like the methodologies and modalities that you use?
Yeah, honestly, that specific program that like I put out is probably like 85% of what our spring off season is, like just start to finish. Specifically, like the systems and the methods. There's some movements that like we don't do, like we don't bench press. Such there's no right or wrong. I just don't. Like so, I have that included in that program, but we don't do it. And then there's a lot of like stuff that we do that's not included. Like there's a lot more like. I'm like from the warm up standpoint that you don't see that's not included. And honestly, like I think there's more like that program in itself probably takes more than an hour. And obviously like we only have like a hard hour. So like even from like a sets and reps standpoint, specifically some sets on some things where you're getting like 6+ sets, like we're probably not doing that. I would love to. In some scenarios we do. But for the most part, yeah, like it's pretty true and true. Like our off season is that program. Like the biggest factor that's not included also in that program is our sport practice, which is probably half the driver to some of the adaptations from like there's specificity is a massive player, like if from how I use this program is like we're trying to jump high and there's a massive specific component that's out of that program that we're doing. But yeah, for the most part, true and true what we do every spring.
One of the things I like about um, like being someone who's used framework is the explanations in it of like what each phase is and why we're doing it. From like an outsider's perspective, like trying to get someone to jump higher, there's a lot of like tempo and um, sub-maximal work that's done in the program where
Yeah.
like things may seem slower to the eye. How do those things help develop the stretch shortening cycle, even though
Yeah.
they might look slower in nature?
Yeah, yeah. So like there's I just kind of like term it like just like there's structural underpinnings. Like there's structures that make these things efficient. And it's just like some people say like a foundation, it's the same idea. Like for our foundation, there's structures within the muscle cell. And this is where like the stuff with the sarcomere comes into play. And those are our structures that we're trying to drive specific adaptations in. Because if we're working backwards from trying to make like a really efficient stretch shortening cycle, the limiting factors are probably going to be within the muscle cell. And then there's also a component of like training, and you have to like learn how to train well to do these advanced things. So half of it, like first part of it is just like honestly when you're training, like practice, you're just slowing it down, and we're trying to bridge the gap from like an awareness standpoint. So early with the submaximal stuff, it's like just creating awareness within the movement to get really good at the skill, so you can feel sensations and end ranges and know what those sensations are and what sensations you aren't supposed to feel. So from a teaching component, that's half of it. And then going into like specific adaptations, what we're trying to drive within the eccentric, specifically within like the length and position, where we're trying to literally like lengthen the muscle cell by adding sarcomeres in parallel. So you're getting like you need eccentrics and length. Like that's pretty much it. So like that's how it's probably like a quarter of the factor. We're trying to like specifically lengthen the muscle cell. For us, like in jumping, like basically everything from the hips down, where we're trying to drive that kind of adaptation somewhere. And then like the other 25% is where we're trying to like create like the honestly stiffness within the Titan, because Titan's a big player in like the stretch shortening cycle, and like it's still kind of like an unknown, but the research out on it is it still kind of acts like a tendon. So you have these micro titans within the sarcomeres that are, and you have thousands of sarcomeres in a muscle cell. So you think of like thousands of hundreds of thousands of mini tendons that act the same way as like an Achilles or a patella, in the same way when they're stretched, they shorten. So you can create the stiffness of the Titan when you're looking at the grand scheme of things of like 15 weeks down the road where you have this really stiff tighten, along with like really stiff like tendons like within the patella and the Achilles and everywhere else. You have hopefully really efficient stretch shortening cycles. So you're just trying to like drive those adaptations specifically, lengthen the muscle cell by adding sarcomeres in parallel, stiffen like those passive structures of tighten, and even like your tendons, like your stereotypical patellas and all those things. And then honestly, just create awareness and get really good at the skill of training, whatever specific movement it is. And like another part of it is you don't want to just probably jump right into overloaded eccentrics with never doing them. So you're also honestly just like kind of prepping the nervous system and the structures to be able to handle those things down the road. So it's just like a nice, like on paper progression of going slow to overload to fast. You could probably jump into overload, but the risk is much higher.
Yeah, that actually like bridges me into the next question, which was, so how do you, or do you program those things for like inexperienced or say your first years or transfers who come in, and how does their training differ from maybe someone who's an upperclassman or more advanced athlete?
Yeah. This is like a back and forth every semester. I kind of go with depending on like who the kid is. Um, Transfers, like they're just in it. Like usually it's a transfer. It's like a 1 year grad, true senior, and the nature of the beast now in college athletics, it's just normal now. So there's no more like these long term thought out processes. So like for a kid that's 1 year, like why waste any time? Like, and when you've run these programs enough, like how to like handle it, where it's not so much risk, but there's inherent risk to throw a kid into that, especially if they don't train well or move well. But hopefully you can mitigate that within the first 4 or 5 weeks. But so our transfers, like, yeah, they're jumping right into it in January when they get on campus. We'll take the first 3 weeks to like learn how to train. That's not included within that program of just like getting acclimated to how we do things and the verbiage and just how we want things performed. But true freshmen, I don't. True freshmen are on like a completely separate, because honestly, they're probably going to be here for at least 2 years. Some, like maybe not. So like these kids, like when they're freshmen, probably like some of these kids have never been in a weight room in their life. Some kids have. But at least I know with transfers, there's some awareness of a weight room and there's some background, even if it's not like how we do things, there's at least like cognitively they're aware of it. So it makes it easier. But with freshmen, you have no idea what they're doing or any of their background. So, and in my experience within my realm of volleyball with freshmen, they're usually pretty bad or undertrained. So there's too much inherent risk, and honestly, they get the same results from just the most novice training, anyways, because they're so undertrained. So there's no need to. So yeah, our transfers, yeah, they're in it. Like they've been with us for 4 years, and our freshmen are, yeah, like any stereotypical freshman, on something completely separate.
With those two groups, do you like slowly start transitioning that freshman class into what the other group is doing, or is it like at a certain point you just integrate the whole program?
Yeah, they start transitions. So this is like our spring when we're running like these advanced methods with like weight releasers and things. That's when there's like a hard line in the room of like freshmen are on like just it's just another planet of things. Um, but as we get into the summer, that's when we start to like transition like them into some things, where like for overcoming isometrics, for example, like that's a really low barrier to entry. That's like a good transition for advanced methods that like what we transition freshmen into. So once we start getting into that kind of stuff, like they're kind of on the same page. Really the biggest thing that they're not doing, honestly, is just anytime we're using weight releasers, like they're just not doing them. Same thing with like the chin up for the most part. Like basically it's a full chin up or not, and usually like our freshmen aren't doing a full chin up for like 3 or 4 months. So, but other than that, they're pretty much doing the same thing. And then in the point of time we're in now, we're like our preseason about to start playing. Everybody's pretty much doing the same thing until we draw lines of like red shirts and whatnot. My goodness. All right.
Kind of talking about these isometrics, something that you've kind of, I guess, semi coined on social media is like this 3-position isometric.
Yeah.
As you've developed like that kind of framework, is this something you've been doing for a long time, or something that you kind of just like found yourself trying to fill this need for your athletes? And then
Yeah.
also, like, how has it changed over time as you've implemented it?
Yeah, no, I don't definitely did not come up with that. I've probably found that idea from like um, Tim Karen somewhere. Like I'm in like this coaches chat. I'm sorry, this dog is going crazy. Yeah, 3-point overcoming asymmetrics. Yeah, the first time I ever ran it with the program was last summer. And for like the thought process with like overcoming asymmetrics and going back to like quantifiable adaptations is and like specifically at the structures in the sarcomere. We're trying to like with eccentrics, essentially, you're usually lengthening the muscle cell and adding things in series, or and like you have to kind of think about like pennation angles matter a little bit. But with overcoming isometrics, we're actively trying to shorten, but you don't have enough force to overcome that inertia. So you're just that's what makes it an isometric, because you don't have enough force to move it. So what happens is like the adaptations is usually you're adding sarcomeres and like I may have got this back, but you're adding sarcomeres like in basically you're making the muscle cell wider, like they're going in parallel. Sorry, series and parallel. I get those always mixed up. So you're adding them in parallel, so the cross section area gets bigger. So you have more potential to generate force, which is like hypertrophy, But specifically, like where this adaptations happens, always going to be like in the length and disadvantageous range where you can't produce enough force. So the adaptation is going to be more potent when it's the limiting factor. And then for us, like with isometrics and concentric training, like with dynamic movement, you're always limited by like the weight on the bar and your like least and your weakest range, which is probably like the most lengthened position. So if I wanted to like get strong concentrically and I just squatted traditionally, like that's fine and it works. But there's always like within the strength curve, like you're not getting the same adaptation through the full range of motion. And then vice versa, like the systemic fatigue is extremely high with dynamic movement. So like like doing it hard, like 5x5, for example, like yeah, it pretty wrecks your nervous system, and you can't really do much else if you do it how it's supposed to be. But with overcoming isometrics, obviously there's not a ton of systemic fatigue because there's no dynamic movement. So there's not a lot of like accumulation of like metabolic fatigue. But with overcoming isometrics, I kind of view it as like an overload for the concentric. Because with like a 1RM where you're having like high force in this dynamic concentric movement, it lasts maybe like 3 seconds and you can't do another rep. And you're exerting like 100% force. But with overcoming isometrics, you can like isolate the weakest range. And instead of only getting like a second or 2 seconds, I can now get like 6-8 seconds with max force and like the weakest range that you couldn't get with dynamic movement. So applying that through the full range of motion in the 3-point, going obviously from the weakest to the most advantageous, shortest position. It kind of just viewed as like an overload for the concentric with time. So you're just spending, instead of getting like, again, 1RM, 1 second of dynamic concentric action through the full range, I can kind of break that up and get like 6 seconds in each spot. And then maybe I can accumulate 18 seconds of max force in the concentric in the same way I could like a traditional concentric like dynamic movement without the systemic fatigue. So I think it's like in our time frame now with like our preseason and in season doing a lot of those things where we want to maintain a lot of lean body mass and musculature. That's a great way to do like high force concentric bias things without the systemic fatigue of overloaded dynamic movements. So that's where like that came into play for me, is like searching for something that can replace like heavy loaded in time frames where it's pretty iffy, which is playing. So I think I got the idea from somebody else, and somebody's probably been doing it since like the 30s. But so now we've just been implementing a lot now, like in these preseason kind of time frames. We're about to start playing, and a lot of our in season for that, just to overload concentric action without the systemic fatigue.
I was curious on like, since like the modalities that you use are probably not as common amongst like other collegiate programs, like how do you know what is too much and like what is not enough? Because like usually it's like, oh, 3 to 5 sets of 3 to 5 reps, like we're just gonna keep it at that. But you're talking about how you'll push the overcoming isometric to 8 seconds. I've seen you push it to like 20 seconds. How do you know like how many sets and how much time to do for what type of adaptation you want to get?
Yeah. So I got this like idea with the timing from the Overcoming Isometrics from Christian Thibodeau, and he talks about like we have extensive yielding isometric. Like the same thing applied in Overcoming Isometrics. So you have this extensive, like you don't have to Overcoming Isometrics. You don't have to go at 100%. Like you can do things sub maximally. So that's where I insert like these extensive Overcoming Isometrics, where we get into like the ranges like you're talking about, like 20 seconds. We're trying to accumulate a lot of time and a lot of tension, and that's like where we'll use early in like our summer with these three position overcoming isometrics, trying to bridge the gap again with like driving a ton of like neural drive to create awareness within the like length and position with an overcoming isometric, but also like what we just talked about, we're trying to add a ton of sarcomeres. You have more force generating potential. So like the 20 seconds in the length and position is great, and you don't have to go at 100%. It's like you just push it 60 to 70% and maintain that for 20 seconds. And then just like anything, like there's just a progression of like slow to fast or light to heavy. Same thing with time of long to short, and intensity inversely goes up. Now, I don't know if there's probably some literature and some research out there. I mean, I don't know. I just, again, like on paper, like Thibodeau's kind of laid this out where systematically it makes a lot of sense and it's easy to progress. And then also from the standpoint of like how your nervous system reacts to things, and like specifically with like the structures of contractile tissue and like the parasympathetic nervous system. Honestly, like if you want to alleviate a ton of muscle tone, getting into like these overcoming isometrics maximally for extended periods of time, like going, especially within those length and positions, to tell your nervous system like it's okay to like have tension here for a prolonged period of time. That's going to kind of again suppress like these proprioceptors of like the Golgi tendon. That's going to be like the rate limiter for like force. So if you can suppress the Golgi tendon, like suppress like muscle tone, and like almost in a sense stimulate like a parasympathetic response, so like your body can relax into these lengthened positions, and it be okay with like these submaximal extended like overcoming isometrics. Same thing with the yielding isometrics. It's a lot more common and a lot more applicable. But yeah, as far as like timing, I think I've just time again, like just trialing these things out. And I have a bias where I think like college athletes are undertrained and like over recovered, and you can never not push the needle enough. So just keep trying to push this threshold until you find like a breaking point that we haven't found yet. I'm sure we will at some point. But also on the end of like if we're doing like an 8 second overcoming isometric, like the first 2 seconds are probably like you're kind of like ramping to 100%, and then like you could probably hold 100% for like 3 to 4 seconds. So at that point you're at 5 6 seconds, and then there's going to be like a spike down, and we just want to like during that spike down of maybe like second 7 and 8, like there's a component mentally of like just can you withstand and like can you overcome that fatigue just to keep pushing at 100%, even though like obviously you're not. So there's some components there of like, yeah, I know you're not pushing at 100% for 8 seconds, but sometimes like just doing hard things and feeling uncomfortable, like by pushing hard for 8 seconds, has some value mentally to push yourself within training. That's like 1% of the reason like we do things, but some people find that valuable as well.
I'm curious, have you or do you use like force plate data for these overcoming ISOs ever to just drive that intensity? Um, or is it pretty strictly just on like the person to I don't know, find that
Push.
intensity?
Yeah. Yeah, no, we haven't done it with force. We only got one set. So like if I wanted to mess around like in December after our season, maybe. But just time standpoint, it'd be logistically probably impossible. So like yeah, it's usually on the man or woman to kind of push with some intent. And honestly, I haven't really had that issue like within my population with kids training. Don't get me wrong, like there's probably scenarios where they're not, I'm sure. um, but that's why like we'll with especially like where we're having overcome isometrics that are like we really want to produce like high force and the intent needs to be at 100%. That's like why we'll do those functional isometrics. We're putting weight on the bar, so you have this dynamic muscle action first. So you can't fake like that, because you have to move the weight and then you have to hold the weight for that time. And if you are like submaximally pushing it, the pins, you're going to come off the pins. So that's the point of like the functional isometrics. It allows us to quantify that on a larger scale with the team when we don't have 8 force plates at each rack. So like that allows us to quantify the 100% effort when we need it to be 100%.
I know some of the guys here were actually testing that, and they found that when they loaded up the bar and did an overcoming isometric against the pins, that the it was more force than when they weren't using the weight, even though they're having the same perceived exertion, which I found to be really interesting.
Yeah, I think it's been a while since I've kind of looked into that because when I first did it, there's like you like pushback, and like you have to like have these arguments and why we're doing these things. And like I just gave you the reason why. It's really simple. Like there's no crazy adaptation I'm trying to search for. But what you do get with like the initial concentric dynamic movement is like when you have like like a partial range, you're doing like the top range, maybe so you have like maybe 120% of like your 1 RM back squat on there. You're going to create a lot more like intrinsic stability to move that initially. So like obviously when you have more stability, you have the ability to produce more force. Like the same way like when you get on like a hack squat, right? You can move a ton of weight. It's just more stable. So intrinsically to move that weight, your body has to create more stability. So I think like that is the factor that plays in the ability to like produce more force within that overcoming isometric is there's just probably naturally occurring like more stability somewhere. Probably because that dynamic movement to move that like super maximal load. Um, that would be my assumption. I haven't really dove into that because I don't really care for it too much, honestly, because that's not like what the adaptation I'm looking for, anyways. But when I did have to think about it, that was like the conclusion I came to.
You're saying like pushing with the weight against the pins, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Um, like staying on the same topic with like force plates, do you ever use force plate data to individualize training, or do you is there any certain metrics that you will look at throughout the whole year?
No individualized training. I kind of had this conversation recently, or hearing people have this conversation recently. Um, you're getting into like the asymmetries and like these things, and I having to attack these specific asymmetries, or whatever. That's the example I'm going to use here, and it's like um, that jump, like a counter movement jump, like specifically in that scenario, there's those asymmetries. But do you have these same asymmetries like within the skill that actually matters? And like how can you like quantify that in the skill? Like you can't. So I think like sometimes we read into that specific like tool and like those data points a little too much and change everything based off that specific like skill of like a counter movement jump, when probably like that's not the specific skill that matters in their sport anyways. So like for example, if like a kid has like a 15% asymmetry and it's always 15%, like is that like a red flag? I think the red flag would be like if it's 15% and then jumps up to 30, like then that should probably be the red flag to maybe look at these things. But if it's like a constant, like everybody's obviously asymmetrical to some standpoint. And if there's like some deviation of ebbs and flows, but if there's like a red flag deviation of like I'm saying 15 to 30, I think then that's when you can start looking into like addressing individually. But going back, like no, we don't individualize any training off the force plate. It just use it to quantify like going back to like the structures and like the stretch shortening cycle. So for us, like the only like things obviously we care about on the force plate is like jump height, and then like force velocity is 0 is going to be a big player for us. And then honestly, like RSI, modified RSI, like the only things I really care about. I don't get into like the propulsive forces, eccentric rate of force, and none of that stuff. Time to take off. Those are all things like we'll look at and track throughout the year because those are the things we want to see improving at least within like our January to August, where we're like trying to like going back to developing the structures. And if those structures are getting developed and then we start working the skill to use those structures, you should see like those numbers get better with time. Um, and then within the year, like same thing, we want to see those things improve from now on. Now, I wouldn't say so much like the stretch shortening cycle emphasis, but more so the skill of using the stretch shortening cycle and jumping high and taking less time to jump high. We want to see that improve now more so from August to December. Um, but yeah, no individualization, but we do obviously, we'll track the force plate. I don't deep dive into the metrics, just use it to quantify because at the end of the day, like the most specific thing we want to do is like health, like that should go without saying. and then just jumping high, but specifically jumping high within the realm of volleyball, not a counter movement jump.
Talking about jumping high here, I want to kind of transition into some more like specifics about that. You recently had a post about some of your players' jump heights and how they've changed over time,
Yeah.
and it was insane. I mean, I just read through a couple. These are in inches: a plus 7.5, plus 4.5, plus 5.5, plus 5.5, plus 4.5, plus 5.5, and plus 4. This is a list of what, 7 girls, and they're all touching over 10. Uh, just like talking about developing that jump and getting like the
Yeah.
most out of these girls. What do you think has been like the biggest impact on that? Whether it be like the actual weight training, like plyometric training, or just like actually focusing on those mechanics of jumping, and then also like just over time, how do you build out this development to get the most out of these girls' potential?
Yeah, I think it's hard to like pinpoint one thing because we're doing all these things at the same time. I would have to remove something maybe to see like what's the limiting factor or the thing that moves the needle the most. I think it's a combination of all. Like obviously, like our training within my realm of the weight room is like hyper focused on that quality and like that outcome. And then we'll obviously on the other end like try to like if that's our outcome, we hone all of our like focus on developing that skill, like just getting really skilled at the approach. Because like any movement's a skill, and there's efficient ways to do things and non-efficient ways. So we want to get the most efficient as possible. Usually that's like a big limiting factor for a lot of people, honestly, is just the skill. You probably have like the genetic makeup and all these things already. You're just not efficient within the skill. But vice versa, we have kids that just like they don't have the structural makeup, and like that's the limiting factor. And then like the third realm of it is probably just like lifestyle factors of just nutrition, like handling stress. Like those things are also a big player. So I think those three things are like what we hyper focus on to move that needle. I don't know which one is like kind of relative to the individual, maybe, or what moves the needle the most. But yeah, all three of those. I will say, like obviously, as we like build this program and we're decent, like you get these better recruits, obviously, and like the more like volleyball, like physicality is half of it. So like the higher, like the best recruits in the country are going to probably be some genetic freaks. So like what happens when you get a genetic freak in the weight room training for 6 months, like crazy things happen. So that's like some of those kids, for example, like they've been here for since January and like have these great results. It's just their genetic makeup. They're made to do these things. Like on the vice versa, on the other end of the spectrum, like when we first got here and we've had kids that were not that and were not genetically freaks, but were really skilled and had to work really hard. But no matter like the same stuff we're doing now, like they weren't getting to those same like robust adaptations. Like, yeah, they were jumping a little higher, but not to that extent. So if anything, the limiting factor is like recruiting just freaks that can make those like those numbers look the way they are. But like the buy-in standpoint or buy-in compliance, whatever you want to say, like I think like what helps us is like previous success and like these results and kids seeing these results on recruiting visits. And then like when we're sitting kids down and, like honing in on like the development, like this is what we do here. And like, all these things in the recruiting standpoint, like our coaching staff puts a big emphasis on this when we are recruiting kids. So and volleyball, like everybody wants to jump high, like that's a limiting factor for some kids to go to various schools. So when we can put an emphasis on that and almost like guarantee you probably will jump high if you come here, it helps us get these kids. So when they do come on campus and they've already heard these spiels about development and they get in the weight room for the first time, and it's easy because they chose to be here with this being part of the reason. So there's a lot of compliance already. It's no pulling teeth begging like that. They knew what they were getting themselves into coming here, so it makes it really easy. That's for sure.
And then, in a sport like volleyball where they're doing a lot of jumping on the court in practice, is there very limited opportunity that you have to like work on that jumping off the court? Or is it something that you kind of can integrate into training and keep those workloads manageable?
Yeah. It's right now is like a good time, like where we're like August. I think is from a stress standpoint the highest stress point of year for like a lot of fall sport athletes, soccer's, like volleyballs, where your season's kind of starting, and like in the summer you have basically it's optional. if you're not here in the summer. Like you have no care hours, so you're not with coaches. Um, and then you go like 0 to 100 right into these unlimited hour weeks of 2 a day training, all this stuff. And it's hard to find that time. And even like once you get in season, it's hard to find that time. So what like we do from like just a skill standpoint of teaching the approach, at least once a week, like we'll go through like whether it's just in a warm up, even our pregame warm ups, and like just somewhere where we're going over just like small drills that kind of pennies to the bucket from that skill. Obviously, we'll emphasize this a lot like previously, where we don't have to like where we're not missing out doing it now, but just kind of like touching it up a little bit. And then like within my own training, it's like our emphasis for things become different, where like we're not biasing a lot of passive structures, eccentrics, like all those kind of things. But same idea, like I want to touch it up a little bit. I don't want to just completely leave it cold turkey. So things like true plyometrics, like depth jumping is like my favorite true plyometric, and we'll do that year round. So like once we're playing, and like right now, like at least once a week, like one session a week, we're having true plyometrics with depth jumps and maybe something else. Um, but as far as like jumping now in our time, like this is where like specificity takes over, and our specific skill is the approach in volleyball. So just moving general to specific from January to now, we're at the point where we're uber specific, and all these structures we've developed, you're now using them in your specific skill, and we'll touch them up here and there in the weight room, and then touch up the skill component of the jump and the approach every now and then. But we're not trying to move that needle anymore.
I feel like I might already know the answer to this question, but like, do you feel like the preparation you do in the off season is the reason why you might be able to go to more extremes when you're in season? If that makes sense.
Yeah, man, I think everybody trains hard from January to now, but the limiting factor always across the board. I won't say high level program. There's some, it's kind of scattered, but it's just training in season. Like people just stop trying to train hard in season, and it becomes like just managing. We want you to feel good. We're gonna bubble wrap you. The main thing's the main thing. Like we're just complimenting you now. Like no, like no, no. We've been training since January, 5 days a week probably. Why would I cold turkey stop? Like there's nothing I can do probably now in the weight room that's gonna like be systemically fatiguing if you've been training consistently since January. Like obviously I'm not going to do any like crazy like metabolic work or something like the extended like now, like there's some logic that has to be there. But training with like 100% intent, like an hour in the weight room, like 3 to 4 days a week in season, like just doing the same thing you've been doing since January, with logic, with the time frame you're in. I think that's where like people want to microdose things, and like obviously there's a lot of out of their control of like maybe their coaches don't want to do these things and like schedule. I get all that, but like training 15 minutes 3 days a week, you just redo it January, like you're just back to square one every January. It's like so for us, like we have two goals like in the season, like nothing else. Is obviously we want our best players playing year round, and then we want to jump as high as possible in November and December when the NCAA tournament starts. So to do that, like you can't just cold turkey stop training. Like you have to train through this time, and with like a plan and logic, like emphasizing different things that aren't going to take away from other things, where you're still going to move the needle. You just train the same. Like we're still squatting, we're still doing chin ups, we're still overhead pressing, like we're still doing true plyometrics, we're still doing technical skill work. It's just now we're emphasizing different things with those movements. So I think that's where everybody misses a boat, is the consistency in season of, they want people to feel good. And this goes back to me saying like college athletes are over recovered and under trained. And then once they do get in season and you stop training, and now like they have all these stressors, and then they're just underprepared. It's a revolving door. You see it every year. There's just an inherent fear that like the strength coach doesn't want to be to blame for maybe like fatigue, like I don't know, but yeah, just train hard in season. It takes care of itself.
Being said, I mean, you kind of touched on it earlier, but what what methods do you use in season? I heard earlier you said you kind of still touch the eccentric stuff, but
Yeah.
um, like what percent of your in season work would you say is like biased eccentric, iso, and concentric work?
Yeah. I once I get in season, it's not so much more like we're not specifying like contraction types anymore. It's more so like the goal, like there's goals in season again, like I just told you, like the two main ones, but then also like from a movement standpoint, like we want to be able to maintain like high movement quality, high body awareness. So obviously like getting in these end ranges and contracting, yeah, that's going to create awareness. That's like where like the overcoming isometrics in the end range come into play, and just like general like tempoed pause stuff in the end ranges for extended periods of time. And then also like a big player is can I maintain like as much lean body mass as I possibly can in season, because I don't have as much like the structural taxing eccentrics and dynamic loading that we do in the off season. Like that's one of those things like you can't do in season because that will like fatigue and like show its face in play. But now it's just emphasizing other factors. Okay, I can't do a ton of systemic fatiguing things with like heavy dynamic loading. Okay, insert overcoming isometrics where I can still get the same like concentric adaptations without the systemic fatigue and like high forces in the various ranges. So for me, it's like those qualities. I want to maintain lean body mass, obviously stay healthy and jump high. And then with that, like we start biasing them, maybe like the concentric, if you could say, like biasing concentric style training. A lot of extended pauses and end ranges where you're killing momentum and there's not a lot of passive structures involved. There's no stretch shortening cycle. It's now just can your contractile tissue contract to overcome that position? Overcoming isometrics, where I can still get these high forces in these all positions without the systemic fatigue. And obviously, there's a ton of neural benefits to that. And then, like eccentric wise, not a lot of like submaximal fast eccentrics. Like, I guess you could say eccentric wise, like that's where the true plyometrics come into play with the depth jumping and various like just remedial plyometrics we might do. Where now that again playing a role into specificity and like using the stretch shortening cycle and like the joint angles and the positions you're going to see. But it's really simple. Our end season is really simple. Like our sessions, for example, like I can guarantee at least 2 sessions a week where we're training within the weight room, and one of them like we're gonna squat, do like a push up and a row and some like posterior chain work. And like that session is probably going to be like a lot of extended pauses in the end ranges. So pause squats, um, pauses in the push ups, pauses in the disadvantageous positions of the row, which is the top. It's very general, just very general. But for us, the emphasis is to maintain awareness in those end ranges. And then we have another session where maybe it's just all overcoming isometrics, like depending on the time of year, maybe it's like an advantageous position, the top range of a squat, and we might complex that with like a plyometric or a jump, or like a overcoming isometric, like for like the upper body, whether it's the row or like the pecs or something along those lines. Where now like we're trying to get this high force and those higher neural drive things into the system in some way. And then like if I'm lucky and I get like a third day, depending on travel wise, like we'll do a lot of like these gymnastics type movements where again body awareness, creating awareness in your body. Obviously, it's a lot more engaging than a lot of things, and then kind of use it for I don't want to say like accessory work, but things we might get on like the higher end of rep ranges, going back to like maintaining like lean structural body mass that where things that aren't like super systemically taxing, like a chin up and a squat and like a press. It might be like single leg movements and like just very remedial movements, but the rep ranges might be a little higher. But yeah, man, it's simple. Like it's not like anything like we're obviously doing in the off season. That's setting us up for now. Like where now the emphasis is like just maintain moving well and like let the skill take care of itself.
How much do you like value that kinesthetic training? Like that you said the gymnastic stuff. I've seen videos of like rolling and crawling, and kind of part two of that. How do you explain that to an athlete to get them to buy into it? That's something I personally struggle with. Or like, how do you explain it to a coach when they like walk in and everyone's crawling and rolling on the ground?
Yeah. Yeah, it's I value it a lot. I think like when you're talking about like high level athletes, the best athletes in the world, I think are really aware of their bodies under chaotic situations, and that's why they can exhibit high level skill under chaos. Is they just have awareness. Obviously, they're really skilled, but there's some component of awareness within that skill. And I think awareness is trainable. I think any kid like the best athletes I've ever trained, or like best movers, like people say like best movers, like within the weight room or something along those lines. Like they have a background like in for females like in dance or cheerleading or gymnastics or maybe for like a male and maybe like mixed martial arts or wrestling or something. So they have a lot of body awareness that's kind of like built up from like their just childhood, and then like just taking those remedial ideas and honestly just it's just play. And I think gymnasts have like the best body awareness in the world. So just taking very remedial gymnastics and applying that, like there's no like set out system and progression I have for these things. Like we just kind of mess around, honestly. Like there's things I like do and like how they should be done, but yeah, the progressions off of them are just random, like just take it where it goes. Um, so I value it a lot for like I don't know if how do you quantify kinesthetic awareness? I don't know, but I think getting these people into like these positions where they have to be controlled and these awkward things and a lot of weird things are happening. I feel like that probably moves that needle. How much I don't know, but from like a warm up standpoint, it's a lot more engaging and it's a lot more enjoyable for the kid. I like at least anecdotally for me, like our kids love it. Our kids love doing cartwheels and all these things. They think they're like gymnasts and they like make a competition out of it and they'll judge each other. Like luckily, like our coaches love it also because they value the same idea of like they want our kids moving at a high level and they kind of on the same plane of thinking when I explain it. So it's easy for everybody to get compliant with that stuff. And then going back to like previous success, like it doesn't matter what we do, like you're coming into a program and like they're going to think everything we're doing is like right. It's just based off previous years of success. So that like I don't have a lot of issue with like compliance and getting kids bought into these things. Don't get me wrong, like there's some kids that hate going like doing cartwheels and tumbling, like getting upside down. Like they have a fear of like getting upside down. So that's a struggle for some people. But 9 times out of 10, they enjoy it. It's engaging. It's fun. It's not taxing. It's just different. There's some nuance.
As you kind of plug this play into the warm ups and this movement variability, does that change or get more like consistent as you get into the season, or do you keep it kind of very broad and loose the whole year?
Yeah, I think as we get in season, it gets a little more like systemized. Like I'll start putting like for us, we train every day. Like we have practice. Like it doesn't mean we're going to train in the weight room, but they'll be with me every day pre-practice for an hour. So one of those days is usually like just purely like a gymnastics day, where we're just on the cheer mat, like doing these things, and then we'll do like some isolated, like intentful mobility work, probably pre that. And then like yeah, from like a warm up standpoint, pre-practice, like just like if I know we have an easy practice or something, like that's a great day to have that stuff on. So it gets pretty systemized as we get in season. Like there's going to be things like within like the gymnastics stuff that we're going to do every time, no matter what, like with like the animal crawling and the cartwheels. Now, like some things that will come and go is with time, like maybe back bridges, tumbling, some advanced cartwheels. We're trying to add layers into it like that. That is just kind of just take it as it comes, like reading the room that day, maybe. But for the most part, as we get in season, it gets a little more strict. But in our off season, it's like just free go. Like let's just see what we can get out of this, as much as possible.
I was gonna say just partly because of you and some other people on social media, I played a lot around with these animal crawls at the end of last year, and it's really fun just to see like how into it the athletes get and how much fun they have with it is in just in part
Yeah.
of the warm up, and then how it can just like drive some more intensity and drive some more like energy during training, which is pretty fun.
Yeah, for sure. Matt, and I need to expand it more. I haven't like gone down that rabbit hole probably in over a year. Um, I know there's a lot of like really good gymnastics coaches that have stuff on this literature. And I originally got this idea like scrolling YouTube like all years ago, probably before I even started training. Like within like maybe my undergrad. Like there's a guy like his name's like Valhalla Performance on YouTube, and he just has like these weird ass animal crawls on YouTube. And I got all of the animal crawls I do from him. Like how he does them, I got them from this guy, and we've expanded off of that. But yeah, I value it a lot. There's people out there that probably do it at a lot higher level than I do, that are a lot more systemized and can quantify it a little more. But yeah, I think it's a great warm up. It's a lot more engaging than your basic dynamic.
Reminds me, follow this one guy, and I don't know if it's the same person, but he's like a physiotherapist for like the Canadian volleyball team, national
Yes,
volleyball
I know
team.
exactly what you're talking about. Rhett,
Yeah,
no zombies.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And all they do is just play games for a warm up, and like even when they're on the biggest stages, they're literally playing games and doing rolls, crawls, tennis ball
yeah.
thing.
He'll like the
But
warm up is like dancing and all kinds. He's got a
yeah,
creative mind. I could not come up with that stuff. He has thousands of games. I don't know how he does it.
I try to I try to like use one of them for a warm up, and it's like, how do you think of all these different things and like set it up? And it's a skill to execute that stuff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He does a really good job with that stuff. I not creative enough for that.
So here, I was gonna ask, so do you always lift before practice, and like, is that as a team?
Yeah, yeah, we'll always lift before. So for us, like, it just eliminates the warm up of crap prior. So like they'll come in, they'll train with me, and then they have like a 15-minute buffer to whatever, go to the bathroom, like just things, and then like we'll meet at our board, talk, and then we're practicing. Like it eliminates the need for like just the mindless warm up that everybody does, that you get nothing out of and you hate doing. And once you're like week 12, like it's the worst warm up ever, like getting absolutely nothing out of it. It just eliminates that for us, saves time.
During the off season, do you guys lift as a team or do you lift in groups?
Team, always full team. I wish I could break it up into groups, like I wish I could split the freshmen up and, but just like logistically with like the weight room, we share a weight room with our basketballs, so all the court sports. So timing wise, obviously there's some time and the class schedules and practice, like all that plays a role. And then on top of like the weight room is kind of small. So yeah, just logistically, like I wish maybe one day. But yeah, it's always full team pre-practice.
Sure.
Um, we've mentioned it just like very briefly a couple times, but you also recently had a post about like nutrition,
Yeah.
and kind of what you put into that is what you put out of it, or you get out of it. I just want you like, will you talk a little bit on how you guys like run your nutrition, and then maybe I'll ask a little devil's advocate question, but we'll kind of see.
Yeah, yeah. So, like I value it a lot. I think like when you're looking for factors that are going to move the needle for health is probably your lifestyle and your ability to handle stress and your nutrition. And it's probably not training. Um, so we put a big like penny into that bucket. So I'll kind of oversee most all of our nutrition as far as like just what our kids are eating. So it kind of starts with in the summer we get some like a pretty comprehensive like blood paneling done for our kids, and then based off of those blood panels we can start like individualizing specific needs. Whether most of it all is going to be like some nutrition input of like things to eliminate, things to add more of, that kind of deal, or maybe it's even like a stress issue. Um, and then off of that also supplementation based off these blood panels. So for us, like we just go hyper individualized on the nutrition based off these blood panels. And then within like the stuff we give kids, like America's the fattest first world country. It's the fattest. And when in Texas is the fattest state. Like every corner there's a donut shop and a chicken express. You're just surrounded. You're environmentally in a bad position. And then environmentally, like you're just surrounded by carbs. Like the American diet is carbohydrate based, and it's not like a quality carb. It's like hyper refined carbohydrates, and it's just not great. So there's a plethora of carbs and just environmentally not great, and like these kids just don't know what they know. So we don't rely on them to go figure it out. I think what is the issue a lot of times in college with nutrition is it's just very education based. which I get from like everybody has limitations within like probably budget. And education is the only factor you have, but that's limited to like it's left up to them to figure it out. Like most of the time, it's in one ear out the other. So for us, like knowing that, we just put the food right in front of them, and all they have to do is literally just eat it. And like obviously, we'll educate them along the way because we want to like get to a point where we don't have to like hand feed you, but we are gonna because like you guarantee they're not going to do it on their own. So just put them in an environment where they can't fail. So the things like in their locker room are just going to be like probably like the highest quality things we can like budgetly afford to get, which is probably just going to be like whole foods and like quality things and probably like no carbs, honestly. And then from like a meal standpoint, we try to give them as many meals as we can. So we have like pre-made meals in their fridge for like a worst case scenario when they can't eat or they're too busy. So instead of just not eating at all, you have a guaranteed at least one quality meal. And then they have breakfast and post training like meals after practice. And then on top of that, we just open like an athlete only dining hall so they have access to that. We just try to put them in an environment where they can't fail. So you just feed them, and like not feed them crap, which is going to be like just a carb based diet. And like, especially with like female college athletes, like they're going to be under eating like protein. And there's like this some bias in their heads that they think that they're going to look like a man if they eat too much protein. So our diets are like really simple. I don't want to say diet. We're not dieting anybody. But what we're putting in front of these kids are just high quality whole foods that are protein based. A lot of protein, a lot of veggies, and like a lot of high quality carbs, like a sweet potatoes or like rices along those lines. And that's it. Just it's just an environment like that they're going to get used to, and then like once they're out of that environment and they go off and eat these crappy things, they feel the negative effects of what coming out of that environment is, and they resort back to what's good. So yeah, nutrition if basically is like don't give the kids any autonomy or it's going to fail. Like that's pretty much that's our nutrition philosophy here.
Yeah, I mean, in the photo, the fridge was beautiful. I'll speak just from like my perspective on the institution I'm at. Like, it doesn't really look like the fridge we have. We have the
Yeah.
Core Power shakes, the Belvita bars.
Yeah.
I guess kind of like my devil's advocate question, but it is a genuine question as well. Is do you have like an issue with those products themselves? Just because you feel like an institution, if they're spending money on these other things, they could reallocate that budget towards healthier foods,
Yes.
or just okay.
Yeah, that's it, man. Like if we have the budget, well, you want to get the highest quality thing possible. So we have the budget. So why are we gonna? Uh, we're always looking for the X factor. Everybody else is doing the same thing. We want people to be chasing us. So we're gonna spend the money on the highest quality thing. And now I personally don't value like ready to drink protein shakes, just for like the logical fact like they're stored in a stairwell for like 9 months at a time and they're dairy based that like in your head should like be a red flag immediately. But like on your end, like that's the only option you have. So that's the best option for you. And that's the best option for a lot of people. And especially for like in your scenario, like a smaller program where like kids probably are struggling to eat. And like, honestly, it's not quality. It's like they just need calories. Like, and that's the best option. Like that's going to move the needle just as much as like what we're doing is going to move the needle. So for, yeah, like when you can do it, like, which is going to be most powerful institutions, like why like get the lowest quality thing and just like there's this mindset in like collegiate nutrition to like push carbs because they're athletes and just like these ready to drinks and just it's all very low quality and like you're just pushing like honestly carbs down their throat because they need to gain weight. It's this very like football mindset. So yeah, I do like have an issue with like highly refined like processed things, but if that's the best case scenario for some people, and you should do it. Like if that's the only scenario, do it. Like don't do it because like I have a bias towards it. That'll move the needle for a lot of people.
That was a good answer.
Did you
And,
see how
and your
like
post really, like, I came from a place where in college we didn't really have anything provided for us. It was all on our own.
Yeah.
And coming to Cleveland State, like, it was really cool to me that we even had anything. And
Right.
then I didn't really ever think about that we could be doing, like, more. And obviously I don't have that much control as a GA.
Yeah.
But your post kind of opened my eyes to that and made me think of ways like, oh, we could probably do more in this department. And this probably isn't the best thing we're getting for them. But I always have that feeling of at least we're giving them something as well.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. And like I mean, it took a while to get to this point. Like for us, we can kind of use like we're taking body comps as one of the assessments, and there's correlations to kids that jump high in body comps. So like, And when you can quantify like these things move the needle to the outcome of what we're trying to achieve, which is jumping high. And when you jump high, it's going to affect winning and losing. That's where the investment from the people that make the investment come from. When you can quantify like this is going to move the needle for what we want to do. So like the easiest step for most people that, want to get in a situation where starting to get people on board to invest in these things is try to find a way where it quantifies what like these people want in the grand scheme of things, which is wins and losses. So what in your controllable factor can you quantify like high quality nutrition to impact winning and losing? Like the lowest hanging fruit obviously is health, but most people want to see like data and hard numbers, right? So how can like quality body comp impact like health, and then just explaining that to people, like dumbing it down, like that's all I had to do to our coaching staff to get them on board to spending money on this stuff.
You mentioned like having an impact on winning and losing. Some strength coaches think that you don't have an impact on wins or losses. Can you give like your opinion on that?
Yeah, this is a lot. You can go in a lot of different ways. I think if you have that mindset, then like what are you even doing this for? Like you're replaceable. You are replaceable, and that's why people do get replaced, and that's why these like positions like never change. You want to make yourself invaluable. Like that's gonna move the needle for your lifestyle and like financially. That's what's gonna move the needle when you're deemed invaluable by the people that write your checks. And the only way you're gonna be deemed invaluable is can you impact winning and losing. Like that, we're in the business of that, and it's nothing else. And so controllables that we have is obviously health. We have some like our fingertips are on that a little bit, but obviously there's a lot of outside factors that play into that. And then just like from a performance standpoint, like yeah, we impact those things. And I feel like I can get into like any sport and like quantify a way to impact how I can manipulate training or nutrition to impact winning and losing. I know for a fact nutrition could probably impact winning and losing because like health is a limiting factor and nutrition is probably the lowest hanging fruit. That's an easy way to quantify that. And so from like a training standpoint, going back into like what we were talking about like earlier with like honestly like the muscle cell and the sarcomeres, like for a football offensive lineman, for example, like your whole job is to basically overcome inertia. Like you're just two massive men. Who's gonna overcome? You know, how can you can train to overcome inertia, and you can train somebody to become like a really great offensive lineman. Same thing in basketball, like I think basketball and volleyball are very similar, like very like passive structured, like dominant, like athletes. Like the stretch shortening cycle is a massive player into the physical success. There's a lot more skill in basketball, but there's also a physical gap at the highest level. And you can train physicality, and honestly, the lowest hanging fruit for probably like basketball athletes is health and just honestly pain. Can you get kids out of pain? Like that's going to impact winning and losing. So yeah, I think that's bullshit. Like you can definitely find a way. It may not be in the weight room. It could be somewhere else, but you can find a way if you just get like out of your comfort zone and cross the gray area. Because at the end of the day, like we always resort back to this. Like we complain about our position. We complain about like we have all these things. We don't get paid enough. What are you doing to get paid enough? Are you impacting winning and losing? Like that's really it. That is what's going to move the needle. And if your coach deems you invaluable, that's why these people get paid.
The things that I really like that you said is that you can find any sport and try to quantify this things in that skill. And I think that's really important, especially because like Rowan and I worked at a baseball facility where it was all about quantitative data. Like how can we quantify the sport and get people better at it? Because at the end of the day, people like to see numbers,
Yeah.
and then it's like we can actually measure what we're impacting. But I feel like some people look at that and they're like, oh, you're just data scientists and sports scientists with like all these numbers and stuff. And it's like, that's not the point. It's like the point is we're trying to quantify the skill and then impact those things
Right.
and see if we're impacting those things. And it's like, I feel like some people don't like to quantify stuff because they don't want to see that their program doesn't work or what they're giving their athletes isn't working.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you need to have like some kind of data to quantify what you're doing because for going back to like yeah you need to do know what you're doing. Is it working or not? If it's not working, you go back to the drawing board. If it's working, keep doing it and keep refining it and it keeps getting better. And then on top of like again, how can I add value into my position? Like for me, like these numbers and recruiting, like we have like as we're getting like these 5-star kids in our building and recruiting them, and I can be like, hey, like I can do these things for you physically. You know, that gives us an advantage, and I have data to back it up now. So it allows us to, you know, get higher level recruits and attract like these kids, and like even social media, you know, like putting this stuff out there, and you know, other head coaches see it, and it forces those head coaches' cards to kind of get on board with like the things like we're promoting, and because they see it valuable, and maybe they're not getting it. So it snowballs into a lot of different things. You know, like you need to have data, and the data needs to mean something. I think it's like going back to what we were talking about, like the counter movement jump and the asymmetry stuff. There's going to be data that doesn't move the needle, and like for me, that's really not moving the needle unless like a red flag comes out of it. But if I'm like attacking every micro data point just because like have the data, like you're probably not moving any needles because you're so scattered. But it's like going back to just like, yeah, what moves the needle the most, and get the quantifiable data and keep refining it until like it just runs itself, you know. Like I think that stuff's super important. And like you're saying, like there's a lot of like, you know, just there's ego, you know, and honestly people don't know as much as they know or much as they think they know. So once they start quantifying their programs and the results aren't that great, you know, like that bruises the ego a little bit. So people just avoid it.
Did you have something? Sorry.
I just have a pretty broad question, not really related to that. So if you want to continue off of that, go for it.
I mean, mine could be considered broad too, so go ahead.
So in my eyes, obviously I'm young, so I don't know a ton, but volleyball seems like it's kind of really growing right now, especially at the collegiate level, which I think is dope because it's a really cool sport. It's really fun to watch. So from someone who's like in that world, can you kind of speak to that? Have you seen it changing around you? Have you seen it growing? And then kind of what are you hoping to get out of that growth? And is this something you're thinking you're going to stick with for a long time? Or is it just kind of up in the air right now?
Yeah, I think it's growing for sure. This is probably my fifth season, sixth season working with volleyball directly. I started with volleyball at UMBC, and I got really lucky. Like my first year in that program, like they won their league for the first time, went to the NCAA tournament. So it was really cool. My first experience in the NCAA tournament for like a team I had, and so my first experience at like a high level volleyball program, and you know, and then they did it like they're a really good program. They've won like 4 in a row. And then I came to SMU, and first time head coach. We didn't make the tournament our first year, but then we made the tournament, won the league, and like now we're like a national prominent team. And yeah, man, like we had a game on TV last year on ESPN. We'll have multiple matches on ESPN this year. It's just cool. Like I've seen it like from that standpoint. Like there's a lot more like just eyes on it. And I think it's honestly a byproduct of like honestly the promotion of like women's basketball, to be honest, like the promotion of women's sports. And softball's been doing it for a long time. Like they got it made to have being a spring sport. There's nothing else on TV, so softball's on all the time, you know. So it's cool. It's grown a lot. There's even like within the nuances of college with revenue sharing. There's a lot of positives coming out of that as well. There's a lot of programs supported at a really high level, and you're only seeing that like probably with 4 or 5 sports at each institution that can do those things, you know. So it's really cool to see that volleyball is included in that. And yeah, man, it's growing rapidly. I know it's the most popular like youth sport in America for females is volleyball. And so like getting it on TV is only going to grow it more. And like the value colleges are putting on it is like, who knows, sky's the limit. Obviously it'll never be a football, men's basketball. Hopefully one day on the same caliber of women's basketball. I don't know. That is a lot of factors that go into play there. But yeah, I want to stick with this, what I'm doing right now. I'm in a really great spot. And like, obviously like there's no ceiling because it's growing rapidly. And same thing with SMU. Like SMU's on a freight train with no end. I feel like of growth, and it's just cool to be a part of. And same thing with the program I'm in specifically. Like every year, we've been substantially better, and we have a ton of support. Um, like within my position, like one of my big goals, like it's starting to come to fruition now, is like, yeah, I wanted this director title of volleyball. I wanted to be like that first person. And the same way with like a basketball, baseball, like football, obviously, like they have those directors for that sport. So, and we're like, you were starting to see like some of these more prominent programs starting to establish these same things like this summer and now. So it's cool. Some of these high level programs are getting on board with this value of sports performance within their program. And so hopefully that opens up a whole nother nuance and niche of strength coaches, like obviously there's a couple handfuls there, but there's not a lot. So hopefully we can get that train rolling. And like volleyball's fun, man. It's a great sport to train. The environment's great. The people are great. And I really think it's like an easy sport to impact winning and losing because physicality is half the sport. So yeah, I'm just riding this wave.
Oh, yeah. And congrats also on that director title.
Yeah, thanks.
Um, my question from before was going to be like, what do you consider to be that breaking point? You mentioned like you haven't reached it yet, where you're just like keep going more and more. Is that like wins and loss breaking point? Is that like an injury breaking point? What does that look like?
Yeah, I don't think it's wins and losses or injury because there's factors that are out of my control. I want that breaking point to be like pretty much in my control, and I think it's when like the results we're getting, like we typically get the same results at the same point every year because we're doing the same systems and programming and just like refining them. I think when we get to a point where those results are not the same, and there's like some kind of drop off, that's probably when I've pushed the needle too far. Whether it's training like too hard or I've strayed too far off the path we've been on, one or the other, like that's probably going to be it. I could see that being just like, fatigue, probably like overtraining in a sense. Like I really try to push that needle of really training hard because like when us coaches, like we've all been in, you guys are probably in that point in your life now where you're training hard as fuck. And like you're probably the strongest you've ever been, and like you just life revolves around training, and like the amount of like fatigue you have, and like the amount of like neural fatigue you have, and then not even factoring in like a sport practice, so I try to really push that threshold because that's where the best adaptations come from, training that hard and putting like your life around it. So I always try to like push that needle for our training. So I think if I ever got too close to that point where it's like that, that'd probably be the breaking point.
Sure.
Anthony Adams, any other questions before we ask this final one?
I want to be respectful of your time. You got something
Sweet.
soon.
All right.
So go ahead.
Well, that brings us to our last question then. This is kind of our, once again, another fun question that we ask everybody. It's the AAA What's Powering You? Just something that you have going on in your life that's driving your training, just kind of pushing things forward, whether that's a new program that you're running or some new music you discovered. Just what's kind of keeping your training intense and up.
My personal training,
Yeah.
brother, I hate training. I am that strength coach. I did not walk the walk. I did, and then I had a neck surgery, and now I hate training. I'm getting back into training. I don't train like super hard anymore. Um, so is there anything powering my training? Absolutely not. But there is like like my goals are different now as like life moves on. Like we're at a point in time where like we're just hyper focused on the season. We're about to start playing. We have a really good program that could be really good. So like just trying to refine that. So like that's a big driver in my life right now is because we have a lot of good pressure to be good. So that's unique for us now. There's a lot of expectation. Um, and then outside of that, man, like one thing that is consistently new in my life right now, music. Coincidentally, like I discovered Charlie Crockett like a month ago. If you've ever listened to Charlie Crockett, I love Charlie Crockett's music. It's just got like he's got soul in it, and it's very like country twangy, some blues. I don't know. It feels like you've been through life. So that's my go-to for that. As gets through any of my days, or I should say, my drive to work and back.
That's awesome. My dad's also a big fan of him. So
Don't say your dad. That makes me feel old as shit.
my dad's not
What
that
kind
old.
of
My dad's
genre
not-
is it? What kind of genre is it? Charlie
Charlie
Crockett?
Crockett. It's country. It's country like blues
Okay.
and like it's very like twangy southern. Like it sounds old, but he's not. He's like it's
Gotcha.
obviously new music, and honestly, I've never really listened to country music until now. Coincidentally, it's like it's something in this guy, like what he's talking about, and like just how you ever listen to music and like it sounds like somebody's been through life. Like this guy sounds like he's been through a life, so it's interesting to hear. I don't know, something triggers my neurotransmitters. It makes me feel good.
Well, once again, Anthony, thank you so much for coming on. It was an absolute pleasure to get to know you and talk to you. And just good luck with this upcoming season. I know we'll probably both be keeping up with it, so best of luck to you, and hopefully we'll catch some games on ESPN.
Yeah, boys, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thanks again. I'm also this next week starting phase 3, super maximal. So wish
Oh
me
yeah,
luck.
oh yeah.
But yeah, thank you again. I mean, I admire everything you do. It's awesome. It seems like you like to vocalize your opinions, especially like right now on social media where it seems like everyone's kind of posting the same things,
Yes.
myself too. But it's cool to see you put like other modalities and do things that might be different from what the general population of strength coaches
Yeah.
are doing.
Yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate that. I don't know how I ever got to this point. I was obviously both in your points at some point, and you just got to find an edge, like that's what it is. What's going to make you stick out, not just be another cog in the wheel. I don't know how I got to this point, but here we are.